Hey guys, Cecil here once again. Welcome to another video review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a game called Robo Pit for the Sega Saturn. Now, what is Robo Pit, you might ask? The best way I can describe this game is that it's an arena-based mech fighter that was released in 1996 for both the PlayStation and the Saturn. Now, why am I doing a review on this game? Probably because since it was kind of released so early in the PlayStation and Saturn's life cycles, is that it kind of just got swept under the rug and forgotten. You know, hell, I didn't even know it existed probably until about 8-9 years ago when I saw it on a Saturn release list and I saw, Robo Pit, what the hell is that? So I did a little bit of research on it and it sounded kind of cool to me, so I went ahead and picked it up, and I'm kind of glad I did. So I'm kind of doing this video review to bring some attention to this game. I definitely do think it deserves. But really, the best way for me to show that to you is to show you some videos, so why don't we go take a look at that right now. Okay guys, here's Robo Pit for the Sega Saturn. I'm just going to let the opening FMV play. Go Capelli! Nothing really exciting, but for a game of this era, it gets the job done. So to load up the title screen here now in a quick second, whenever it gets around to it. There it is. So you go ahead and press start, and it'll load the main menu now, and you get several options you can pick from here. I'm going to go ahead and load the original save file that I started the other day. My original one from back in several years ago was deleted, unfortunately. My system memory in the Saturn died, and I had to replace the battery. So here's your main menu. You've got your robot making mode. This is where you're going to go ahead and make all your robots. You got your fight mode. This is where you're going to take on all the robots, and there's 100 of them. You start out as ranked 101, and you fight each robot, and you work your way up the ladder here. And you basically, like an RPG, you actually gain skill points. Your power and your skill increases with each weapon you use, which I'll show you here in a second. Training mode basically allows you to go and fight other robots that are not on the 100 list, and allows you to strengthen your weapons and your stats. Versus mode is where you're going to go play one-on-one with someone else, with robots you've trained and created, which is kind of I think the coolest feature of this game. Unfortunately, I can't really show that to you, so I don't have a second controller plugged in right now. Change arms is where you'll pick your robot that you've created here, and the main weapons you have are on your left and your right arm. So basically, right now I've just got a generic sword equipped on my first arm here, and on my other arm here I've got a gun equipped. You can change the color of your robot, you can change the name of your robot at any time, you can delete any robot. This will kind of give you info of all the robots that are on the 100 that you got to eventually fight and beat to be number 1, which is the main goal of the game. Your options list is pretty straightforward. There's no difficulty level, it's all just one standard difficulty, but you can change the controls, do a music test, things like that. The music in this game really isn't anything to write home about, but for a game like this, it gets the job done. So I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and do a fight with number 97 here, Danger Man, and you'll kind of see the graphics. It's rather simplistic. It's nothing really exciting, but for the era 1996, it gets the job done. Now you got 3 different views you can choose from. You got kind of a first-person mode, you've got a far-out mode, and then you've kind of got a little just over-the-shoulder kind of mode here. I prefer this mode. First-person, while it works, it gets a little disorienting, especially with the controls. Now A button kind of fires your left arm weapon, and your B button here fires your right arm weapon, which is my sword right here. C is what you use to jump, and your Z button is what you use to change the camera, and then you can use your L and R buttons to strafe. And the controls are simple, but they're effective and they get the job done. For the most part, and like I said, when you beat a new boss or a new enemy in the list 100, you get more points, you move up in rank, and you get the weapons that they had, and they become unlockable, and you can use them on your robot, which is kind of the cool thing and a cool feature of this game. Now, like I said, as you saw with that fight right there, the fighting is a little bit on the simplistic and mundane side, and in the one-player mode, in order to unlock a lot of the cooler stuff, you kind of got to play through it, and it can get a little bit tedious and boring over time. I'll be the first to admit that. But you need to do that in order to unlock a lot of the cooler weapons and stuff, and get your robot stronger in order to have to play the cooler versus mode when you play a human opponent in split screen. So I'll go ahead and show you the training mode here one more time, and just to show you what that's like a little bit, and just to give you a little bit more sample of the gameplay. But yeah, usually they'll throw in training mode here. It's kind of a random arena, and every arena you fight is kind of random, and they'll throw 3 different robots at you, and you kind of gotta just beat the tar off them. They all share 1 life bar, which is kind of silly, but they don't take too much to kill. And as you can see, I've already killed 2 of them right here, and it's very basic, very straightforward, and you want to use both of your weapons because that's how your robot becomes more skilled with them. I'll actually go ahead and I'll just create another generic little robot here to kind of give you an idea of how that all works out. So you basically just go into robot making here, and you've got several different heads that have different stats. Power, how strong it'll be. Weight is how fast it'll move. The more weight, the slower it'll be. And defense is how much damage it'll obviously take before the robot dies. So I'm just going to kind of use the generic head here. You can pick several different kinds of eyes. These really have no effect on your robot's performance. It's just for shits and giggles. And then the legs are kind of the other important thing to pick besides the body. You get several different ones you can pick from here. Again, stats. Walking is how fast it'll walk. Turn is how quick it'll turn. And jump is how high it'll jump in the air. Like something with like a spring with like 160, you're gonna go flying. But something a little like tank treads on a 50, at 50, you're not gonna jump very far. So I'll just kind of pick that, and then you can kind of start with the basic set of arms here and different weapons. So each robot basically has to start out with all the default weapons, and then like I said, you go through the ranking, and you just kind of move up the pike with each robot, and as you beat all the robots with that particular robot, it'll unlock those weapons for the robot you created to use. So like I said, to kind of get into the depth of the game, you got to play one player to get to really the fun or 2-play mode. So that's basically Robo Pit in a nutshell. Hopefully this kind of gave you a good idea of what the gameplay is like. So now I'll go on and give you my final thoughts on the game itself, and maybe some other mech and arena-based games for the Saturn and a few other systems that I'd recommend you check out. So yeah, like I said, that's pretty much Robo Pit in a nutshell. Final thoughts on the game. Graphically, it's rather simplistic, nothing really spectacular, but the frame rate is smooth. The graphics are simple and cutesy. They get the job done. They look like what they're supposed to. For a first, second gen, 32-bit game, it works. Sound, you're not going to run out and buy the soundtrack by any means, but the bleeps and the bloops and the sword fighting and the gun sounds, it all sounds like it should. Gameplay, in one-player mode, like I said when I was showing you the video, it can get a little bit tedious and mundane. The enemy AI isn't always exactly the smartest, but for the most part, if you get into it and you start unlocking stuff and you start getting a stronger robot, and like I said, getting more of the weapons and things like that in the game, you will be rewarded when you play with someone else who has spent the time playing through the one-player mode, and when you fight someone one-on-one. That, like I said, is where I think this game really shines, is when you and a friend actually spend some time in the game and unlock a lot of the stuff, and you get stronger and better and more, fun robots and weapons and things like that after you beat a lot of the enemies in the game. That's where you're going to have in the split screen mode, where you can really kind of challenge your friend and really have a good time. But like I said, the flaw of the game is the combat is simplistic, and it can take a while to get your robot up to speed and to get to that point. Like I said, overall, I'd probably rate this game probably around a 6.5, 7 out of 10. By no means an awful game, but if you're looking to play it by yourself,
probably not the best game to get, at least as far as an arena-based mech fighter. There are other examples here I'll show in a second that I think if you're for a one-player person would be a better choice. But for a two-player, if you and a friend or a brother or a sibling are willing to spend the time, I definitely think there is a lot of fun to be had here. Now, like I said, for a lot of one-player people out there, I know like I am, I don't play a ton of multiplayer stuff. On the Saturn and the Dreamcast and the PlayStation, there are a lot of really good mech games. One instance on the Saturn, and I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this game, is Virtual On. This is a port of the arcade game. It really doesn't have, the customization of a game like Robo Pit, but it's a lot more fast-paced, action-oriented. If you get the twin sticks for this, it can be a lot of fun. A little bit lower key games, that are kind of first-person mech games would be a game like Mech Warrior 2 and Gun Griffin. Very, big robots. They probably have a little bit more customization than like a game like, Virtual On does. But and definitely slower paced gameplay, but they're definitely a lot more fun in the one player mode than say a game like Robo Pit. If you want a really and a great series to check out that's not on a Sega system, but it's definitely a lot of very customizable robots and things like that, check out any of the Armored Core games. I mean, there were 3 or 4 on the PlayStation. There were several on the PS2, and there have even been a couple on the more modern consoles like Armored Core 4 on the 360 and the PS3. This has always gotten for a lot of the the mech heads out there, they live by the series, and it's a lot of fun. On the Dreamcast, a few games if you get a chance to check out, the sequel to Virtual On or Atario Tangram. I always probably pronounce that wrong. Another good kind of unique first-person, mech game that's based on an anime, Gundam Side Story 0079. This one's a little bit more uncommon. It might be a little bit tougher to track down. Bandai didn't press a lot of these, but it's definitely it's a short game. But if you like Gundam especially, or if you just like mech games in general, I definitely think it's worth checking out. And there's an import here called Frame Guide. It's also from Software, which is the name of the development company that's done the Armored Core games. If you can find a translation online, this is a lot of fun, and I would say this would be the Armored Core equivalent on the Dreamcast. I know a lot of my friends online really love this game. There's a lot of information on like GameFAQs for menu translations and things like that that'll allow you to get into this game. This game unfortunately was not released in the U.S., but if you can track down an import copy, which shouldn't be too expensive, and you like mech games, I would definitely, and you have a Dreamcast, definitely check this out. So yeah, that's my look at Robo Pit. If you remember from my first review, my last review, I mentioned there was a sequel to Robo Pit that I didn't even know existed, and that's essentially Robo Pit 2, which was exclusively released on the PlayStation, and that's what the topic of my next video will be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun doing it. Again, feel free to comment, subscribe, things like that, and I'll definitely see you next time. You guys have a good one.